What? Missing? One day, my 8-year-old grandson suddenly disappeared. My daughter-in-law came to me for help, saying she couldn't reach my son. I searched frantically. Why are you locked in here? To my shock, I found my grandson trembling in fear inside the trunk of my son's car. When I reached out to rescue him, he slapped my hand away.
No, don't let me out.
He shouted in a trembling voice, and what he revealed next left me shaking. When I was in my mid-50s, my husband, who was 8 years older, passed away. Since our children had already become independent, I lived alone for the next 10 years. My husband had run a law firm, so I received a substantial inheritance and lived comfortably. Meanwhile, I was doing well in my own career as a writer. My son, Jason, dropped out of college and wandered aimlessly for a while without holding a steady job. There were times when I had to pay off his debts. In hindsight, I probably should have cut him off at that point, but many of the people he borrowed money from were his friends, and I couldn't bear to see their lives fall apart because of him. So, I reluctantly gave Jason the money. Eventually, Jason managed to find work, and it was there that he met Amy, whom he later married. They bought a new house in the next town, just one stop away from mine by train.
I've caused you so much trouble in the past, but from now on, I want to give you peace of mind.
After that, he started living more seriously. His wife, Amy, was a lively and wonderful woman, and even after they got married, she continued to work to help support the household. Soon after, the two of them were blessed with a child and seemed to be living a happy life. However, around the time their child started elementary school, Jason began slipping back into his old, lazy habits.
Sigh. It's never-ending stress.
Jason suddenly quit the job he'd been at for years, and though he found new work, he couldn't stick with anything, constantly changing jobs. Whenever I called and asked, "How's work?" he would often respond,
I'm at a new job now.
It happened so often that I eventually caught on. Living that way, his income was unstable, and I started to worry that they might not be able to maintain a proper lifestyle. Doesn't he realize he has a child? What is he thinking? Concerned, I decided to check in on them. I called Amy to arrange a visit, and then went to see their home.
It's been a while.
At the door, Amy and my grandson, John, greeted me, but once I entered the house, I was taken aback. The place is quite a mess. It had been 3 months since my last visit. Their house, which was always tidy before, was now much more cluttered than the last time I saw it. Well, they're both working and raising a child, so I guess it's only natural. Each household has its own rhythm when it comes to cleaning, so I decided to ignore the mess. But I couldn't ignore the fact that Amy, who is always so bright and cheerful, kept sighing. Amy, I don't mean to meddle, but is there something troubling you? Don't hesitate to talk to me about it. My grandson was playing in the distance, so I lowered my voice to make sure he wouldn't overhear our adult conversation. After hesitating for a moment, Amy finally opened up.
Actually, Jason has started taking his frustrations out on things.
What? I can't believe it. Jason had always been a bit irresponsible, but he was never the type to be violent, so I was shocked. I'm so sorry my son has caused you trouble. Do you know what might have triggered this?
That's the thing. I have no idea. When I ask him, he just yells, "It's none of your business."
According to Amy, the reasons behind his outbursts were trivial, like not being satisfied with dinner or being annoyed by the noise outside. Things that would normally be easy to ignore seemed to set him off.
Even today, he stormed out of the house, saying he was irritated just by looking at John and me.
Indeed, Jason's car wasn't in the driveway when I arrived at their house.
But, please, don't worry about us, Mom. We're a married couple, and we'll figure it out, Jason and I.
With that, Amy went to the kitchen to prepare some tea. She doesn't seem very okay though. It seemed to me that Amy was putting on a brave face. On top of that, my grandson wasn't smiling like he used to, and I had a strange sense of unease. John, are you getting along with your dad lately? While Amy was preparing tea and snacks, I approached my grandson and subtly asked about Jason's behavior.
Well, Dad's hardly ever home anymore, and sometimes he doesn't come back for days. He used to play with me, but now, not at all.
He spoke with his head down the whole time, not even making eye contact with me. Just then, my son came back from outside.
What are you doing here, Mom? Showing up out of nowhere.
I was just wondering how things were and thought I'd drop by. But more importantly, Jason, I heard from Amy. You. Before I could finish, Jason interrupted me, raising his voice.
This has nothing to do with you.
Of course, it has everything to do with me. Amy and John are struggling because of you. How could I possibly stay silent?
Ugh! Enough already! I don't want to hear your lectures. I've got my own problems. Just go home already.
He grabbed my arm, forcefully pulling me outside and slamming the door behind me. Jason. Open the door. Jason. I rang the doorbell, but there was no response. I tried calling him, but he didn't pick up. I even called Amy's phone and John's kid's phone, but neither of them answered. Maybe Jason took their phones away. The door was locked, and with no way to contact them, I had no choice but to return home. But the next day, as if nothing had happened, Jason showed up at my house with John. You threw me out yesterday. How could you?
Come on, calm down. John's right here watching, isn't he?
Thinking he had a point, I swallowed my frustration and led them into the living room. Then, all of a sudden, Jason lowered his head and said,
I've got something important to ask. Could you lend me some money? About $2,000. It's for John's lessons. Right, John? You want to take violin lessons, don't you?
Yeah.
It was obvious that Jason had forced him to say that. John looked weak, as if he was scared of something. I pointed out that John seemed different from usual, but Jason brushed it off, saying it was nothing. Jason denies it, but something's off with John. Feeling uneasy, I hesitated to give the money. Then, Jason nudged John with his elbow and whispered something.
Come on.
I really want to play the violin.
Suddenly, as if remembering something, John stood up and shouted. I'd never heard him express any interest in an instrument before. I've never heard him say he's interested in music. What should I do? John looked like he was on the verge of tears. Even though I was hesitant, I thought maybe helping them would bring back his smile, so I took out some cash from the drawer. Here, use this for his lessons.
Oh, thanks.
Without even looking at me, Jason snatched the money. As long as you use it for John. I watched the two of them leave, feeling a knot of unease in my chest. An hour later, while cleaning the room, I noticed my grandson's kid's phone had fallen under the sofa. He must have forgotten it. It's probably really inconvenient for him not to have it. Normally, I would call ahead before visiting, but since neither my daughter-in-law nor my son was answering their phones, I decided to head to my son's house without saying anything, just to drop off the phone. I rang the doorbell, and slowly, the front door opened. My grandson appeared. Here, you forgot this. Wait, what happened to your forehead? John had a big red bump on his forehead. Just then, my daughter-in-law, Amy, came back from shopping. Hey, Amy! What happened to his forehead? It's all swollen.
It's hard to explain here. Please come inside.
Following her inside, Amy told John to go to his room.
The truth is, Jason hit John.
What? But why?
He was in a bad mood. John told me that Jason suddenly yelled "Be quiet" while watching TV and then hit him on the head with his fist.
That's unreasonable. I'm going to give Jason a piece of my mind. Where is he? As I stood up, Amy shook her head.
That's the thing. After taking the money you lent him, Jason left, and I still haven't been able to reach him.
Well, let me know when he gets back. I'm ready to confront him anytime.
Thank you, but I think we need to handle this on our own. It's something we should overcome ourselves.
All right, but if things get really bad, promise me you'll ask for help. Okay? Hearing her strong resolve, I decided to step back for the time being, though I was still worried about them. However, events quickly took a turn. A week after finding out that Jason had hit John, on a night in November, I got a call from Amy.
I'm sorry to call so late, but has John come to your house?
No, he hasn't. What's going on?
He suddenly disappeared while I was cleaning up the kitchen. And I can't reach Jason either.
Oh no! That's terrible. Amy explained that right before John went missing, Jason had been scolding him harshly.
I'm worried that Jason took John somewhere and is doing something terrible to him.
I understand. I'll check the places I can think of. If anything happens, I'll let you know. Stay at home in case they come back. I hung up the phone and immediately ran out of the house, searching the neighborhood. I couldn't find them anywhere, and soon I found myself at the edge of the area between my station and my son's. Just as I was about to give up, I noticed something in a coin parking lot. Wait, is that Jason's car? I rushed over, and as I approached the car, I heard something rattling inside the trunk. With a bad feeling, I took out the spare key to Jason's car from my key case. The car had originally been mine, so I still carried a duplicate key with me. Thank goodness I kept this. With trembling hands, I opened the trunk, and what I saw left me stunned. John! Why are you locked in here? There was my missing grandson, curled up with his knees bent inside the trunk. I quickly checked his body for any signs of injury. Thankfully, he seemed okay, which brought me a bit of relief. But why? Could someone have forced him in here? The thought that came to mind was one I didn't want to entertain. Because the person most likely responsible was the owner of the car. My mind raced with different possibilities, but my priority was ensuring John's safety. I reached out my hand to him. Come on, let's get out of here quickly. But John swatted my hand away forcefully.
No, don't let me out.
He shouted, trembling with fear. I couldn't be sure, but I noticed what looked like bruises on his arm. I couldn't tell if they were from an accident or someone's hand, but given John's behavior, it seemed likely they were from someone. This poor little boy. I hugged John tightly.
I was so scared.
His tension seemed to release, and he wrapped his arms around my back, whispering into my ear.
Grandma, listen.
What he told me next was completely unexpected. No, it can't be. That's when I realized I had been entirely wrong. The truth about a certain person's true nature was revealed, and I understood that everything up until now had been built on lies. I wish I could have taken John's place and spared him all this suffering. Thinking of what he must have endured filled me with an overwhelming sense of sorrow. I won't forgive this. Never. Fury boiled inside me, and my whole body burned with anger. But I couldn't stay at the parking lot for long. We didn't know when someone might come looking for us. John, get in the front seat. We're getting out of here. I drove Jason's car, taking John back to my house for safety. But when we arrived, I uncovered even more shocking truths. They think they can get away with this, but their time is up. I swore to get revenge on the person who had caused my grandson so much pain. It was 11 p.m. I called my daughter-in-law to tell her I'd found John. About 15 minutes later, Amy rushed over by taxi from her house.
Thank you so much. John's safe, right? Oh, thank goodness.
As soon as she arrived, she anxiously looked around inside my house.
Please, let me see him right away.
Now, calm down a little.
I want to take John home and let him sleep peacefully. I don't have time to waste.
Amy began frantically searching every room at a frantic pace. I'm sorry, but he's not here.
Huh? But you said on the phone you found him.
She blinked in confusion, clearly not understanding what I was saying. It's true I found him, but by now, he's probably back home, relaxing with Jason.
Then why did you call me here in the first place?
Because, Amy, I'm here to take revenge on you, for the pain you've caused my son and grandson. The moment I said that, her face froze in shock. I heard everything from both of them. You've been abusing John and blaming it all on Jason. How could you do such a thing? The truth was that the reason John had been locked in the car was that Jason was trying to protect him from Amy's cruel hands. Jason had told John,
No matter who comes, don't leave this car unless it's me.
That's why, even when I arrived, John refused to come out of the car. John told me. He said that one day, his mom suddenly changed. When I first heard this from John, I finally realized that Amy had been deceiving me all along, secretly hurting both Jason and John, emotionally and physically. But staying in the car wasn't safe. Amy could have found them at any time. So, after getting John to safety at my house, I called Jason and had him tell me everything about what had been going on in their home. Jason told me about your affair, and how, when things didn't go well with your lover, you took your frustration out on your family. According to Jason, they had been fighting constantly because of this, and he was seriously considering divorce. At that point, Amy had apparently said,
If your mother finds out we're not doing well, she'll be devastated, won't she?
My son, who had already caused me enough trouble, couldn't bear the thought of worrying me anymore. From then on, he was unable to resist Amy and ended up doing whatever she said. And I hear that you were the one forcing him to change jobs so frequently. Apparently, Amy had pushed Jason into better-paying jobs to fund her outings with her lover. Some of the jobs even had him working on fishing boats, keeping him away for days at a time, just so she could keep up her selfish lifestyle. Thinking back, when I subtly asked John about the atmosphere at home, he said,
Dad isn't home, and he doesn't play with me.
But that was because his mother had ordered him to work away from home. Exhausted from work, Jason barely had the energy left to care for his own child. On top of that, Jason said Amy had dumped all the household chores on him. But with his body worn out from his grueling job, he couldn't keep up with the cleaning, and the house fell into disarray. He must have been under a lot of pressure. The reason Jason lashed out at me and drove me away from their home may have been because he was nearing his breaking point. In fact, he later confessed,
The only thing I didn't want was for you, Mom, to find out about our family problems. So I purposely said terrible things to push you away.
And even after driving Jason to such desperation, you still didn't stop your affair, Amy. On top of that, you even dipped into the family's finances to meet up with that man. According to Jason, their finances had become so strained that they were on the verge of not being able to survive. That's when Amy ordered Jason to come and borrow money from me. To avoid suspicion, she came up with a plausible excuse, saying they wanted to pay for John's violin lessons. She even instructed Jason to bring John along, hoping his presence would loosen my purse strings. You actually thought having John there would make me more willing to hand over money? How devious. When Jason and John came to ask for money, I noticed that John seemed unusually quiet and frightened. It turns out Amy had warned him not to say anything unnecessary if I asked him any questions. And if I didn't lend them the money, Amy had even threatened him by saying,
"If we don't get the money, you'll go without dinner for a week."
That's why John had been trembling the entire time. Jason, desperate to keep their family issues hidden, had brushed off my concerns as nothing more than my imagination. But when you started hitting Jason out of frustration and finally laid hands on John, he couldn't take it anymore and fled with him. While Amy's back was turned for a moment, Jason grabbed John, put him in the car, and drove away from the house. On the way, John became terribly thirsty. Unable to find parking near a convenience store, Jason parked in a coin lot. But when they got there, John, terrified,
Mom might find us.
He was too scared to leave the car. Jason then decided to go into the store alone to grab something for dinner. To make sure Amy wouldn't spot John if she came by, he hid John in the trunk for a short while. Since the weather was cool and it was only for a brief moment, Jason judged that it would be okay. You played the perfect daughter-in-law in front of me, but behind my back, you were doing all this. When Amy rushed over to pick up John, she seemed frantic. But it wasn't because she wanted to see her child. It was because she wanted to get him out of here before he could expose her true nature to me.
"Aw, so I've been found out."
Do you even understand what you've done? Show some remorse.
"You expect me to apologize?" "Ha! No way!"
Amy, now brazen, crossed her legs and sank deep into the sofa, adopting a defiant attitude.
"Honestly, you should be grateful. Your son's a worthless man, and yet I was kind enough to marry him."
What? How could you say such a thing? Sure, Jason wasn't perfect in the past, but he's been trying his best. He was working at his job diligently.
Don't make a big deal about it. He worked at some small company that anyone could get into. It's pathetic. The jobs I found for him paid way better.
Seeing her sneer made my anger surge even more.
Anyway, with a loser like him, I don't think I'll get any karma for having an affair.
If that's how you feel, why don't you just divorce him?
No way! He's too useful. He does everything I say. Besides, you wouldn't want your only son to end up divorced and living a miserable life, would you?
She looked up at me with a sly grin. Jason has a bright future ahead.
Ha! You're so delusional. Jason's a useless man with no potential. His life's going to be nothing but a string of failures.
She threw her head back and laughed loudly, staring up at the ceiling. But little did she know, her laughter was about to turn into screams as she faced her downfall. Did you not know? Jason passed the bar exam to become a lawyer.
Huh?
I had learned that while Jason and John were staying at my house. Jason himself had told me. He really did look up to his father, who was also a lawyer. Jason had always wanted to follow in my husband's footsteps, but kept that dream hidden, thinking he didn't have the talent. However, he secretly studied because he thought becoming a lawyer would give me peace of mind. My husband's old clients have been saying for years that they would hire Jason as their legal counsel once he got his license.
Wait, does that mean he'll be getting tons of work soon?
Well, it's possible. When I said that, Amy threw her fist in the air.
Yes! I'm finally going to join the ranks of the rich.
She opened her phone, humming while browsing through brand name items on a shopping site. But her glee wouldn't last much longer. Amy, I think you're misunderstanding something. Jason plans to divorce you.
What? No way! That's not true!
Her face went pale as she stared at me. Ignoring her, I checked my WhatsApp messages from Jason. Heh, it seems he's found exactly what he was looking for. When I couldn't help but smile, Amy immediately noticed.
What's so funny?
Well, Jason just told me he found evidence of your affair. Now we can demand a hefty settlement from you. While Amy was on her way here, Jason and John had returned to their house. I had advised Jason to gather anything incriminating about her relationship with another man that would help in a potential court case. According to his message, in the process, he stumbled upon something unexpected. It seems you've racked up quite a bit of debt. I wonder if you were using that money to dress up for your lover. Jason had found multiple loan statements from finance companies in the trash and had taken photos of them to send to me. From what we could tell, she owed around $20,000. Jason also mentioned that you quit your job and have been lazing around all day.
There are full-time housewives, too. What's wrong with quitting my job?
But how will you pay back that massive debt after divorcing Jason when you don't even have a job?
Well, that's...
And since you sent Jason to me to beg for money, I assume you don't have any savings either? Did you marry my son just to get your hands on my inheritance? Amy bit her lower lip, unable to refute my sharp accusation. I was probably right on target. In any case, Jason has made up his mind about divorcing you. I don't think that will change.
Fine, then. I'll take custody of John and get a huge amount of child support.
I was astonished that she could still say such things at this point. You won't be getting custody.
What? After a divorce, the mother's rights are stronger. Don't you even know that?
Amy sneered triumphantly, but her confidence was short-lived. A mother who hits her child has no rights.
That's a lie! John made that up.
John may be only 8, but he's mature for his age. And who do you think the court will believe? A woman buried in debt or a child? My calm response left Amy speechless. Of course, we'll demand compensation for your affair and for hitting Jason. And be prepared. I'm going to report you to the police for what you did to my grandson.
What? Am I going to jail? No, I don't want that.
Suddenly, she burst into tears, clutching her head.
I'm sorry. I'll do anything you say.
It's too late for that. Someone like you can't just be left to roam free. When I said this, she fell to the floor and bowed her head, pressing her forehead against the ground.
I'm your sweet daughter-in-law, aren't I? It was just a moment of weakness. Please, I beg you. Let me off this time.
What are you talking about? You've just been pretending all this time so you could get my inheritance.
But if you don't forgive me, my life will be ruined. Please, think of it as helping someone in need and let me go.
No matter what you say, I won't change my mind. You should reflect on what you've done. While Amy was crying, shouting, "This isn't how it was supposed to go," I calmly called the police. When the officers arrived, they escorted her away. Later, I heard that Amy reluctantly admitted to her crimes. While the exact details remain unclear, it seems she'll be facing a severe punishment. The divorce between my son and Amy was finalized, and for the emotional distress caused by her infidelity, Jason demanded $30,000 in alimony, plus $150 a month for child support. I imagine these terms will be hard for her, but Jason has no intention of going easy on her. As for me, I'm now living with my son and grandson. Jason is working hard to establish himself as a lawyer, and John, with a smile back on his face, happily attends school every day. Watching over them like this brings me great joy. How did you like today's story? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next video.